Recording in progress.
You should shed some light on it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you all for being here for the Detention Center Ad Hoc Committee on November 17th, 2022 at 4 p.m. And Ms. McBride, if you would, this meeting is now called, this meeting is now called to order. And Ms. Carrillo, if you will, call the roll.
McBride. Horatio.
Here.
In English.
Present.
We do have Councilwoman McBride online. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Carrillo. At this time, we'll move item 2. And before we entertain a motion, are there any changes, deletions, or additions? There being none, can I move?
For acceptance of the approval of the minutes from April 19th, 2022.
Hello, can you call for the vote?
McBride. Horatio. English.
Yes.
Thank you.
Move to item 3, adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
No requested changes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Really, call for the vote as is.
Horatio.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
We'll move to item 4, discussion items, and we'll begin with A, Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center Overview and Improvement Plan. And at this point, I will turn it over to you, Administrator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. English, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this committee. What you have before you in your packet is a presentation of information.
Mr. Brown, excuse me, Madam Chair. I've been speaking, but I think I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I apologize. I've been voting, but I don't think anyone heard me. All right, thank you.
Ms. McBride, would you like for the clerk to record your votes?
Yes, please.
And could you tell her what those votes are?
Yes. On the last 2 for acceptance of the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Do you have that, Madam Clerk?
And thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I do.
And I apologize, Madam Chair.
Oh, that's okay. And at this time, please forgive me, Administrator Brown. I'd like to recognize Mr. Malinowski and Mr. Paul Livingston. Thank you all for joining us. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your packet, what you have is a list of items that we would like to discuss with you. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to both introduce and have a large portion of this information shared with you by our interim detention center director, Mr. Kramer Harvey. He'll be coming to the podium, but as we start this communication process of information related to the detention center, I wanted to start by addressing what you see there as item 4A1, staffing updates, and particularly the hiring initiatives. So in your packet, what you have is something that you may have seen across a couple of our platforms, both on our social media. I've also been on a couple of interviews with a couple of news stations, trying to communicate the value that we place in our detention center officers and to recruit individuals alongside our current detention staff to come and work at the detention center. And a part of that process, myself along with my team, we did a couple of things. So in addition to the flyer that you have, which was drafted by our communications team, we also did something internally with our budget and finance team, and we developed a pay plan. You may recall that we've gone through a couple of iterations of that pay plan, and I thank this council and this committee for approving that because it helped provide information to our team in a way that shared with them what they could expect from Richland County in the form of support from a financial means. And I'll talk to you just a few moments about what that looked like. So from a pay plan perspective, one of the things we did was we communicated when you work for Richland County as a detention officer, we're going to put value on the number of years that you work with us. So as you stay in that position, you will see a steady increase in that. We also said to ourselves, we want to communicate to the team ways that you as an individual can add salary, if you will, to your pay, separate and apart from what the county may do from time to time. As you all are aware, the county did something recently where we did a COLA. Well, that requires the council to take an action, right? But one of the things we said was, as a detention officer, if you go out and you get a educational degree in criminal justice, right? You can receive additional pay for that. But we didn't limit it to that. We said that different levels of education are worth different value. So the more you invest in yourself, the more we invest in you, because we believe that's a return that we will receive with a more educated, a more well-rounded detention officer. We then also said sometimes people don't have the time, or they work better by getting certifications rather than going to maybe a university or a college. So we said we placed a value on receiving certifications that are consistent with state or national recognized accreditations for detention officers. So a detention officer, him or herself, could go out and get a certification. So again, they could affect their pay in that way. And we thought that was important to note as well. So these were ways that individuals could affect their own pay. The county came in and said, in addition to the pay plan, what we're going to do is we're going to set aside funds to both encourage hires in the form of a hiring bonus. Their hiring bonus was $5,000 broken out over a period of time. And it's based on, again, people staying in contact, staying employed with Richland County. But as many of you are aware, anytime you're dealing with employment issues and you're trying to get people onboarded, you have people who have been with you for a number of years who feel like, am I going to be equally addressed? And so we also put in a $5,000 retention bonus in order to encourage those who had already given service to Richland County to continue to retain that service with Richland County. And so that's why you saw on the flyer, not only do we have a starting pay that was raised twice, so we raised it from $36,400 to $40,000, which was the current starting pay now. We put in a hiring bonus at $5,000. We also put in a retention bonus. So those were some of the initiatives that we did to affect the hiring and the retention of employees. In addition to that, we had employees who were working extremely long hours over and above who are salaried employees. And those salaried employees said, Mr. Brown, we have tried to show that we are committed to Richland County, but how do we receive some sort of benefit when we're going above and beyond in terms of service hours worked on a repetitive basis? And so I also put in a temporary stipend to affect executive level employees that receive salary versus being paid on hourly. So the point there was to say, yes, you are a salary employee, but we recognize that salary, we generally expect you to work a certain number of hours. And you're working a significant amount of those hours over and above consistently. So yes, we're going to put some value on that. So that's something else we did as a term of an initiative. And so all these things kind of combine together to have an impact, which certainly I'm going to have Mr. Harvey talk to you about. But I would just say to you, thanks to the council's willingness to allow me to make those steps and us implementing those steps, that we're here today to say that the concerns that were brought to our attention back in early March about the need for more staffing at the facility, that not only those steps that we took, but bringing on a third-party contractor, which was Allied University, you may remember me talking about that, bringing that security process in as well. All of those things combined to paint a very different picture today than that we were talking about in early March. So I appreciate the opportunity again to have this discussion with you this afternoon. At this point in time, Madam Chair, if you allow me to, I'm going to again turn it over to our interim director, Mr. Kramer Harvey, and have him go through the remainder of the presentation. And from time to time, I will jump in and provide additional information just to kind of highlight some of the other policy initiatives that surround the steps that we have taken and that we're going to continue to take at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center.
That's fine. Are there any questions on this?
Thank you for this report. And I love that officers are given the opportunity to affect their pay through certifications and further accreditations. When folks are investing in this way in themselves, are they investing solely out of their own pocket to attend, to get these certifications or accreditations? Are there other sources of financial help available to them? It doesn't have to necessarily be us, but I'd love to know just a little bit about what opportunities people have to afford these further accreditations and certifications. And I don't have any, I don't know what an accreditation would cost someone.
Sure. So I'll answer your question two ways. In terms of the things that we can control as a county, the county does have an assistance program. So an employee may have to make some initial investments, but we do provide a certain level of reimbursement. So yes, ma'am, Mr. Horatio, there would be an opportunity for someone to better themselves, if you will, and ultimately better the county and receive some form of remuneration in a term of assistance, as well as then the ultimate result being an increase because they received that degree or that certification. In the form of certification, there may be opportunities where those classes and those different courses may be paid for directly by the county as they are in alignment with the regular routine work that is being performed. So those things exist today without any additional steps needing to be taken by me as the administrator or you as the county council.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Harvey.
Good afternoon to everybody. First of all, I appreciate the county administrator and his staff for all that he has done for the detention center. And I just thank this body for allowing me to come and present today. Before we start, I just wanted to give just a little overview of who I am so you all can know who actually is talking to you. I'm Kramer Harvey. I'm originally from New Jersey. I would like to say that my family migrated from up north to come down south, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Been in South Carolina probably for over 30 some years. With that, I went to Northeast High School. Then after that, I went into the military, served the country, went to Fort Hood, Texas, and came back to South Carolina. When I came back to South Carolina, I went to Kershaw County and became a cop. I worked in the detention center as a regular officer, worked my way up as a classification officer, became a cop, went to Camden Police Department, worked at the Sheriff Department, and then I went to DJJ. Oof. With the DJJ, and I think DJJ taught me so much about detention centers that I did not know. One of the things that I think DJJ taught me was the therapeutic way of how to run a detention center. So I did 7 long years with DJJ, learned a lot. And then I came here to Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. And before I start, I want to tell you something about Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center that I don't know if most people know, but Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center was one of the most premier detention centers in the state some time ago. I remember when I first started in this profession where I used to go to Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, and we actually used to train there. At that time, Mr. Myers was giving a lot of training there. He used to give a training called Richland 101. And at that point in time, you could walk in Alvin S. Glenn and your feet would squeak because the wax was so thick on the ground. And so I'm actually a fan of Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. And it excites me every day that when I go into Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, that I'm actually working in this place that when I came to this profession, admired. So when you hear my passion, know that it's because I'm a fan of this place. I love Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, and I love the staff that are there. Some of the staff actually that's been there for so long are here today. And they're behind me in the audience right now listening to how we're going to present this fine detention center to you today. And so I'd just like to thank you. I'm a natural teacher, so I love teachers. I'm an adjunct instructor for the Central Carolina. So if I go into my mode of teaching, just pump my brakes and tell me what tell me to calm down or whatever, but I love teaching and I'm passionate about that. And for this—
Start preaching, but you're good.
Well, I can do that too. For the next 40 some minutes or whatever, and I wish that we had a little bit more time, but for the next 40 some minutes, I would like for this to be interactive. Meaning that if you have a question or you have something that you want to bring it up, pause me right where I'm at or whatever, and get that off your chest so we can go to the next thing. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so overview. Thank you. The Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center is responsible for the incarceration of adult and juvenile offenders in a fashion that provides for the protection of the public and institutional safety, as well as the delivery of a constitutional level of service to those incarcerated. We have about 279 employees. In light of the most serious incidents at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, the department begun a review and improvement plan of the following concerns. Significant swift changes are necessary for the betterment of employees who worked at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center and the detainees at the facility. You heard from Mr. Brown. He talked about the staffing updates. Next slide. The staffing updates, he gave a great comprehensive and thorough review of that. But some of the other concerns that we looked at was the facility updates, where we're going to be talking about the medical provider, the food provider, our telecommunication provider, technology initiatives, some remaining technology needs, officer detainee safety, security, and wellness initiatives. And last but not least, which is very important, all of it's important, but this one is very important, is our physical structure enhancement, our dormitories that we're going to talk about. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This is our org chart. As you can see, we're pretty much standard. This is a standard law enforcement org chart. Right now, I'm the interim director, and we have division managers. Some of the division managers are behind me today. Next slide. Our staffing chart. When I submitted this PowerPoint presentation to you all, we had 125 staff at that time. Currently, that number has risen. We're going to be at 140 by the next cycle date. And that's very significant. Mr. Brown and this body has really put a lot in trying to get detention centers into the office. And I appreciate that. And I think the detention center, the people there, they appreciate that. We are seeing new recruits every week, which is unbelievable, y'all. Yeah, being in this profession for 18 years and these last couple of years in law enforcement, it has really seen a decline in people coming into the profession. But we can't say that at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. Every 2 weeks, our recruiter is submitting 9 packets of people coming into this detention center. And it's just overwhelming. One of the comical things about this is that people say that they know that the detention center has changed because they can see the parking lot filled with cars. And that's significant. When you have a lot of cars that's in the parking lot, we know that there's bodies that's actually in the detention center that's serving this population that we have. Next slide. Following the departure of our former medical provider, WellPath, on June 12th, the department acquired Advanced Correctional Health Care. That is our new medical provider, ACH. ACH is a twofold provider that provides medical and mental health services. Such services aid the detention center, ensuring detainees receive the best comprehensive medical care while in custody. The provided medical health service has significantly changed the method and philosophy on how we manage mentally ill detainees. One of the things, our nurses, our medical staff nurses, we have 8 full-time nurses, 4 RNs, 9 PRNs that's on staff at the detention center. Our mental health providers, we have 6 mental health providers that is supporting us dealing with our mentally ill. I got to pause right there for a minute and talk about that, because our mentally ill is one of the most significant parts about our detention center. A lot of people look at the detention center and they just think that it's just bad people going into the detention center. But the truth of the matter, there's people that goes into the detention center who cannot even comprehend on what they're doing. And that's the population that we're dealing with. 75% of the people that comes into our custody are mentally ill. Right now, I think we have like 60 some people that are mentally ill that's in the detention center on the population. So we have to serve them a whole lot different than we would serve any other population. And that's why I'm glad that we have ACH that's on staff, because ACH can give us the training that we need to deal with the mentally ill.
Harvey, not a question, but just a statement. My background is in mental health, and I've done that for over 20 years. So my heart is elated to see this and to see how seriously we have taken this as a body. So thank you.
And in the presentation, Madam Clerk, we're actually going to go into and talk about a little bit more about what we're doing with those mentally ill compared to what we was doing in the past. So you will appreciate these next couple of slides that will be coming up. Next slide.
And thank you, Mr. Harvey. Just real quick, Madam Chair, to that point, while we're going to show the level of focus that we have on caring for those men and women who are going through those challenges, it would be remiss if I did not point out that that is not the fundamental responsibility of Alvin Glen Detention Center. The law says something different than what we're doing as it relates to who is responsible for that activity.
Great. Our food provider, Summit
Chair,
Food.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Madam Chair, Councilwoman McBride wishes to be recognized.
Recognize Ms. McBride.
Oh, thank you. I just want to echo your concerns and comments. You may get into this later in the discussion, but you talked about, and you know how happy I am in terms of us working with the mentally ill detainees. Can you tell me, or will you do it later in your presentation, the difference in the number of mental health and nurses that you have on staff now compared? Is this are these new staff positions or what? Or will you discuss that later?
No, we can discuss it right now, ma'am. Yeah, actually, these are new staff. The last medical provider we had, they didn't focus so much on the mentally ill. This provider that we have, ACH, is totally a two-folded mental comprehensive body. They're focusing on the medical side as well as the mentally ill side. We have a mental health, we have a psychiatrist, we're getting social workers. We're dealing with not only the medical side, but the mentally ill as well with that. So ACH is definitely one provider that I would say that is something that I haven't seen in a jail setting before. And hopefully I answer your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you. I work with the ACA detention accreditation and all, and I know that nationwide and mental health and mental illness, addressing that is a major national concern as well as local concern. So I'm happy to hear that we're moving forward with that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Wanted to acknowledge the county.
I love this energy.
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to kind of reiterate a statement just made by the administrator, and that the administration as well as the staff and leadership at Alvin Glen are taking these strides to deal with people that need mental health services that are detained in the facility. But I did want to reiterate that actually is not the service that the detention center is supposed to be providing, and that legally that is not their primary obligation, but because they have no other choice because they have so many detainees that deal with these issues that they have to do it. And because I guess other providers that are statutorily supposed to be providing it may not have the ability or not doing it, they have to. So I just want to make that clear that this is something that a local detention center is not supposed to have to do, but Alvin S. Glenn and Richland County is doing it because they have to in order to be a successfully run facility.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next slide. Our food provider is Summit Food Service. They've been with the department for 16 years. Most recently, the food service provider was audited by DEC and received an unsatisfactory grade. It was actually a C. After implementation of a corrective action plan, the department received a satisfactory grade. We went back up to an A within 15 to 16 days. During the execution of the corrective action plan, staff determined that the kitchen required a complete overhaul due to the wear and tear. And you'll see in the next slide some of the wear and tear that we actually are remodeling our whole kitchen. Currently, right now, our kitchen is offline. We have a mobile kitchen that we are using to do a complete overhaul of our current kitchen. One of the slides, as you can see, you see some of the deficiencies.
Madam Chair, sorry. A temporary kitchen unit.
There you go.
Not a mobile.
I love our attorney. Temporary. Some of the current deficiencies you see: missing tile, pipes, and this stuff has just been going on for years. It just needed an overhaul. Next slide. Same scenario. Our telecommunication provider, we had a company called Amtel. We switched to what is called ViaPath. Compared to the former communication contract, ViaPath is able to provide tablets which offer beneficial services such as attorney can meet with their clients from remote locations. Families can meet with detainees from remote locations. Detainees can access the law library and the recreation services. The tablets is one of the most modernized things in jails right now. That is the best thing since sliced bread when you're talking about jails. It's a holistic approach to where the detainees still feel that he or she has some type of normalcy. And with all these lists of things that the tablet, this new company that we had called ViaPath is associated with, it just helps out everybody in the long run. One of the best things I love about it is that the attorneys can meet with their clients. And we all know it's a burdensome sometimes with staff and with low staff and to try to get the detainee with the client in the detention center. Now the attorney can just meet right in their office and talk to their client, which is a great thing. Families, everybody love FaceTime. They love to see their kids and everything. So that FaceTime with their kids or whatever on the tablet is definitely something great as well. Our technology initiative, after careful review. Yes, ma'am.
My question. Not required, but implement.
Yes. I'll speak for
Correct.
Right, Joe, you're recognized.
Thank you. And so for those calls, so for instance, if you're FaceTiming your family,
Yes, ma'am.
at what cost to the detainee?
Yes, ma'am. It's like 7 cents a minute. Yes, ma'am. Yep. And they front all that on their end. But we still have it to where the family can come to the facility and they still can connect with them that way as also.
Got it. Thank you. And I'm hoping that Richland Library, people are able to check out books through a Richland Library card on the tablet.
We'll work on that.
So to follow up to that, Mr. Horatio, you may recall that this body decided that they wanted to reduce the cost to the detainees. And so in doing that certainly has happened. That also means that cost has to get paid, and it still is paid. It is just no longer paid by the detainee. So it is paid by Richland County through the funds that are collected. So I didn't want anyone to think that the cost changed. It's just that someone else now is paying for that cost. And so But yes, ma'am, that rate was reduced.
After careful review of the facility operation, leadership determined technology improvements were required to improve efficiency. One of the things we did was the use of our body scanner for all employees before entering the most secure area of the facility. We implemented that body scanner. The body scanner, basically, you go through it, it's just like a metal detector, but it's a little high tech. It actually looks at everything to see if there's any type of contraband or any unauthorized item that's coming through the facility. Another initiative that we implemented was our software to store our training materials in our field training program, which is called Power DMS. Now we're going to have our employees to where they can actually go online and they can take tests through Power DMS and they can read the policies through that. Before it was just, we had them on thumb drives. Nobody could find the thumb drives, or you had them in a big manual book. You can't take the book home. Now this is a web-based where you can actually read the policies at your house. In spite of the improvement, 2 additional key security pieces of technology is still required. Our current camera system is outdated. The camera system been in there since we built the jail. So we need a newer camera system. Our internal jail management system cannot support the demands of the department. Necessary data cannot be retrieved to assist us with legal matters. And so we're going to eventually need another JMS system, and that's our jail management system. Next slide.
Question.
To reduce the, yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the technology and the jail management system. I thought that we appropriated funds about 2 years ago to upgrade that, Mr. Brown. Was that different?
So you recall the conversation that took place. That conversation was a part of the jail telecommunications contract. But when we renegotiated the pricing, by reducing that pricing, you in effect took that away. So we're going to be looking at addressing that through our current means. But yes, ma'am, there was a conversation. But once you renegotiated the pricing and took that pricing down to the 10 cents, you in effect removed that jail management system.
Okay, we did. Did we remove it, or we didn't allow to get an improved management system?
The funding,
part of it?
The funding from the contract, yes, ma'am. The funding from the contract at the higher pricing level was what was going to support the funding of your new jail management system.
Okay. So it would support the funding. Okay. I just want to reiterate how much we appreciate what's being done, and I understand perfectly well about. We were meeting minimum standards with mental health and other areas, but we're beyond the minimum standards. We're moving towards a more exemplary type of program, and that's how we want Richland County to be known. So I thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
To reduce incidents among detainees, assaults, fights, and sexual misconduct, Alvin Glen Detention has strategically evaluated the current population within all housing areas and identified the classification system needed revision. According to our state standards, the classification system is designed to properly assign detainee inmates to classification categories for placement in housing and other detention-specific function situations based upon a consideration of sex, age, sentence, and non-sentence. Basically, it tells you how to appropriate or to separate those offenders from other offenders. This is significant in that the current classification system, or the previous classification system we had, was a little outdated. It needed some revision. And one of the things that we did was, in revising that, next slide, we established a mental health unit for females and males. That's significant in that Alvin Glen Detention Center never had that. What we was doing with the mentally ill before was we had them in what they called SHU, a specialized housing unit, which is lockup. And for those of us that know about the mentally ill, being in a room for 23 hours or 24 hours a day, all that does is exacerbate the illness. It does no good to them. It doesn't matter how much treatment you try, they have to have freedom. And so we changed that. Our mentally ill they're not in SHU no more. They're not in a specialized housing unit. So that's very significant. We also established a medical unit. Before, the medical Those who had medical issues or concerns or whatever, they was in SHU, they was in lockup. We took them out. They're in a separate unit now as well. We also reassessed our vulnerable population for our older detainees. We had an issue, or we had some concerns with our older detainees. They was being victimized by the younger group, those 19, 21, 25-year-olds. And so we took our older detainees out of those units and we put them in another unit by themselves. We have seen significant decrease in incidents in those units. The older detainees, they just want to get through their time and go home. The younger ones, y'all know how they are. They need a little bit more love. So we have them separated where they need to be. We also established a step-down unit for the most aggressive detainees. And this is the unit where basically we're shutting down SHU to get remodeled. Specialized housing unit SHU that you have seen in the newspaper will no longer be that unit. We're actually going to be remodeling that whole unit. Captain Sly, who's my captain over security, he's actually chairing this and championing this movement with these detainees. We reduced detainee population within the most aggressive phases and units. Now you don't have a lot of offenders in one unit. Now they're spread out among the facility to where you can actually help them out a little bit more with the services. Next slide. Emphasis was placed on detainees' improved care via the use of jail management best practices. Previously, the detainees did not have adequate recreation equipment and or scheduled time periods that allow indoor and outdoor recreation. To combat the negative behaviors and increase detainee inmate approved care, management incorporated several tools to aid security staff, housing units. We brought back the half-court basketball courts. What we were doing previously was there was an outdoor area where they can have recreation, but there was no recreation items. We would give them a handball. Who plays handball anymore? I don't think no one plays handball anymore. But so we brought back the half-court basketball goals. The tablets for recreation, the games and the movies, that's there. We brought hair clippers back so they can cut their hair. You know, and some of this stuff, it may be insignificant to others, but for those who have been there for a while, this stuff is very important. And so we brought that stuff back to make sure the detainees understand they're detainees, they're not inmates. There's a big difference between the two. These tools are incentive-based and are These tools are incentive-based and are available if detainee behavior meets disciplinary criteria. Staff has consulted with former SCDC Deputy Director of Programs regarding programs and volunteers for Alvin Glen Detention Center. We are opening the detention center back up to programs. We're bringing life skills back in. Richland County Library, we're partnering back with Richland County Library, and they're going to be assisting us with bringing life skills back to the detention center. That's going to be in effect in January.
Extremely happy.
And Mr. Harvey, I just would like to point out, and I know we don't like to harp on this, and I won't change the good vibes, but when we say that the tools are incentive-based and are available if detainees' behavior meets disciplinary criteria, I don't want anybody to be under the impression that not all the men and women in there do a good job with their behavior. Right. There are some folks that do intend and try to do things to harm themselves and to harm others in the facility. We won't go into all those details, but we do want you to know that that's why the safety and security of both the detainee as well as the men and women who are watching the detainees are equally important to us. And so while we want to provide incentives for good behavior, we also want to make sure that we don't dismiss the fact that we have some people who those incentives don't benefit them in a way that they change their behavior. So again, don't want to change the good vibes, but it is still a detention center, and there are still people in there who don't always do the right things. Go ahead, Mr. Harvey.
Good point. Next slide. I'm gonna speed up just a little bit. I know y'all were ready to go. Okay, physical structure enhancements. Following the reassessment of the facilities infrastructure, survey of the facility for potential vulnerabilities and feedback from security staff and outside constituents, Alvin Glen Detention leadership committed to improve the physical security of the facility and ensuring a safe environment. What we did was, we talked about this earlier, we were remodeling our kitchen. We also are installing heavy Lexan break-resistant glass throughout the facility. Before, some of the majority of the cells, the glass that was used as an observation, like Mr. Brown said about those detainees who don't want to get on the program, they actually would break those that observation window. Now we're putting heavy Lexan in there where it's not going to be breakable. We also are installing what they call service ports, or what now they call service ports. Before, back in the day, it was called flaps. And that's where you give food, you give medication and everything. Before we started doing this, we only had SHU. That was the lockup unit where we would transport those detainees from the general population area to there based on SHU was the one of the housing units that had those flaps. What we're doing now is we're remodeling our units to where every unit can have those flaps in their rooms. So now you won't have to transport to an isolated unit. You can just restrict that detainee to his or her room, which is very significant between room confinement and isolation. Remodeling our special housing unit. We talked about that, remodeling all the units. The first unit that is being remodeled starting on Monday is our Yankee unit. That's where we're putting the service ports in. That's where we're redoing the plumbing. That's where we're doing the painting. It's going to be very therapeutic in nature as well. Next slide. On the same line, we started the use of a body scanner. We increased our facility shakedowns. We acquired more security equipment. We have more handcuffs, more leg irons. We started reviewing 364 of our policies. Our policies have been outdated for a long time. We actually created an accreditation committee I have 5 ACA auditors who actually work at our detention center, who we started a committee to where we're reviewing the policies monthly. We're going through the policies and we're updating them to get them up to standard. We created a tip line. A lot of people don't like to say what's going on, but they will use the tip line. So we created a tip line. We posted signage throughout the facility regarding those smoking areas and contraband. We actually even increased our collaboration with Richland County Sheriff Department with investigations. Next slide. And this is some of the current physical structure enhancements that is going to be going away with. As you can see, that's a porcelain toilets and sink. Porcelain is not supposed to be in a jail. It's just not. And so we're changing all of them out. Next slide. The one on the right is the one that's supposed to be in the jail. That's the one that's stainless steel and it's very inmate, not tamper-proof. Next slide. And so in summary, Alvin Glen Detention has seen a significant improvements and changes these past couple of months. Like we stated earlier, new staff has been added to the ranks of the department, which enhances the safety of the facility. Although the improvements are significant, challenges still remain. Our Richland County Sheriff Department has advised that Alvin Glen Detention Center, or has advised us that it will cease transporting their detainees to magistrate court. This significant change added additional burden to Alvin Glen Detention Center. So security staffing still remains low. So this change required additional resources to manage the demand and on the requirements of the courts. Resources that will allow security staff to safely perform the additional duty. We're going to need more staff and more support in this. When the Sheriff Department pulled out from transporting the detainees to the magistrate court, our team has to pick that up. So we're going to need additional offers. We're definitely going to need additional security equipment, and we're going to need additional secure vehicles. Next slide.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Councilwoman McBride. 2 things. Has the sheriff's office already pulled out, or are they planning to?
They already pulled out, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And what percentage of the detainees, and I'm so happy that you used the word detainees. I've been trying to get that word used for the past 7 years. So I appreciate you acknowledging the detainees. How many serious offenders you have, percentage-wise?
I don't want to give you a haphazard number, but I would definitely say 60% is definitely a good number. That's serious offenses.
They're more the serious and violent offenders.
Yes,
about
ma'am.
60%.
Yes, ma'am. But I would definitely after this meeting, I'll get the numbers to you so you have the exact numbers.
Okay. And I know Mr. Brown mentioned that based on law, we are not responsible for mental health services. So who has that responsibility, Ms. Brown? Mr. Brown, do you know?
Ms. McBride, this is Attorney Wright. That the responsibility falls with the Department of Mental Health.
Okay.
But I guess the problem has been they have, I guess, continuously stated they do not have beds or space for the detainees at their facility. So they remain at the local detention facility. So we have to deal with that.
Right. So are they providing any other resources to help us? The State Department of Mental Health.
I would say that there are some opportunities where we have partnered on certain things, but in terms of spacing or housing, no.
Okay. So they're not providing us the needed housing, but there are other services they are providing. Is that what you're saying, or you are looking at them providing additional services, or both?
No, ma'am. I'm saying in terms of housing, the answer is no. There are some other programs that Department of Mental Health through the Columbia Area Mental Housing, for example, has provided. And in particular, if you want to know what that program is, that deals with injectables. So we have received a certain amount of funding related to that type of service for those who have certain injectable needs that are housed within Alvin Glen Detention Center.
Okay, so that's an area of possible better collaboration that we can do, that if they can come to the table, providing more resources.
I'm hoping so, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and one more question. The last part, I know that in some detention facilities, at least when I was in Georgia, we did what you call something similar to internal monitoring, and we had a joint relationship with other counties. And like we did, it was like a peer review. I was wondering, had the director heard of that, or is that something that has been done before? I might want to look into it. So before you have an accreditation, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I'm actually familiar with that program. I don't know if we've done it at Alvin Glen Detention Center, but that is something that's a vision of mine. Okay,
thank you. All right. I know it worked out pretty well for us at the detention facility. The last question. So you're pretty satisfied with we're providing detention for juveniles. So you're satisfied with that area.
No, ma'am, but that's my next slide.
We provide. Okay, sorry, jumping.
No, that's okay. You can teach my PowerPoint. Our juveniles. Incorporate the best management practice for our juvenile population is another challenge. In contrast to the Department of Juvenile Justice, the current juvenile philosophy coupled with available resources is very punitive. Unfortunately, our staff currently that we have now are not equipped with how to handle juveniles in the most therapeutic way. DJJ, that's all they do. They're part of that holistic makeup of a juvenile. Our people is more on the corrective side. One of the good things about it is that that's about to change in the next couple of months. Though the population is low and fluid, the current philosophy does not fit the national best practice of therapeutic versus punitive juvenile detention. Alvin Glen Detention Center, with the aid of the county public defender, is transitioning to a less restrictive philosophy with its youth. Some changes we've implemented on our own. We reduce the room confinement. And room confinement, and I brought that up earlier, room confinement and isolation are two different things, but they're all under one body. Isolation, of course, is you just isolate, you're putting somebody in the area. Room confinement is that you're using their room to isolate them. We're reducing that. We're giving the kids more outside recreation. Youth are now receiving weekly outside recreation time, indoor recreation, which consists of board games and video games. And we also are giving the kids the tablets now. Now they will be able to get the same benefits as the adults side on the juvenile side. Last but not least, we're giving them additional food. I know that seems are comical, but we actually these kids that we have under our care are growing kids. They need additional food. So we're giving them an extra meal at the end of their dinner time. Next slide. To continue his pursuit of national best practice for his juvenile population, Alvin Detention Center needs additional staff and resources. We need a program manager that can deal with the day-to-day operation of our kids. Social worker. ACH actually has helped us in that they're going to be providing us a social worker for our kids, which is something significant. We talked about the mentally ill on our adult side, but we really don't even touch the mentally ill on the kid side. That is a serious issue that all detention centers are faced. Majority of the kids that come into the care of law enforcement, they suffer some mental illness. Our kids are no different. Activity therapists, we need an activity therapist who will provide a range of activities and programs under the guideline of improving cognitive, emotional, and social behavior. Next slide. And in closing, I'd just like to thank Mr. Brown and this body for assisting Alvin Detention Center with its current improvements and those to follow. As previously stated, the constant support and resources will enhance the detention center. And I'd like to applaud this body of legislation for allowing my team and me to report on the conditions of Alvin Detention Center. I believe with the support from the council and the county administrator, our future is going to be bright, and we're going to make Alvin Detention Center one of the best detention centers in the state. Any questions?
Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. One of the things that I would like to echo is what Ms. McBride said is the exemplary way in which the staff has just really taken this on and making this so much better. And it's really appreciated on every level. And I thank this body just for allowing that. But Mr. Brown, thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you, Dr. Thompson, for all your hard work. So with that, are there any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. McGrath, you're recognized.
I just would like to reiterate everything that you've said, and also to say that this is one report that has been very good. It's been an excellent report, and there has been research done that supports exemplary programs and supports how a detention facility should be run. And I appreciate that research or that knowledge going and for us to move forward based on good prototypes. So I appreciate the work that the staff are doing and the administrative support. And I am very pleased with this report. And Mr. Brown, you know, it's not hard to please. It's hard to please me. So I am very pleased with the report. So I just want to thank you all for the hard work, because I know it's a lot of hard work that has gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a few more items. I know we only have a few minutes. I can cover them if you'd like for me to continue if there are no additional questions. So on the other updates, there are two other related items. One is the attorney-client visitation project. You may recall we had discussed the folks that are going to visit their clients. Many times they have to go into a secure area within the facility, and that is not ideal. Working with our outside architects, working with our internal staff, also getting feedback from our public defender's office. We've had an architect drop some plans. We've shared those plans even with our justice system, talking about the steps that we've been taking to improve Alvin S. Glenn. And right now we're hoping to get those plans finalized and potentially get a bid out in December. So that will be something that you will see coming back before this body. Also wanted to just touch base, as you've seen, you've only seen really a tip. The photos that we showed you here today don't really do justice for the level of work that has gone into Alvin Glenn Detention Center, the number of contractors, the number of employees who have come together. I know that there have been reports out there, and the reports sometimes only show a negative spin on Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. They don't show the camaraderie that's happened and the collaboration with other entities as we've taken steps to improve the detention center. And so I just want you to know that Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center is not isolated from other agencies. I myself personally, as the county administrator, have reached out to the Department of Health and Environmental Control. I've reached out to Department of Corrections, and not only me, but my staff, and we'll continue to do those things to show our commitment. And as you look at some of these changes to the detention center, one of the things that Mr. Malinowski, I think, made a motion, and it was about making sure that we address the per diem rate. And Mr. Malinowski, I know you're not necessarily on this committee, but what I want to point out is part of the reason why you haven't gotten the details of that agreement is because of these changes that we're making, these investments, those things we need to capture so that when we're going to someone saying, here's the new rate that we're charging for having to house these men and women in the facility, they reflect the investments that Richland County taxpayers are making in the facility. So that's one of the things that's also ongoing, but you will be seeing that coming before you as well. And that it certainly will ultimately go to the appropriate committee as we update this committee as well. So I just wanted to point out those two things related to the detention center. And as I close out and take any additional questions, one of the things I will say, you've heard it from Mr. Harvey, you've heard it from the county attorney. There are a lot of other people you haven't had a chance to hear this from, but no one should be under the auspices that Richland County does not care. There are plenty of us who've been here working in not only these facilities, but working in the detention center, long hours trying to address long-term issues that many people have had an opportunity to address, but they haven't done it. And so this body is currently in the process of doing that, and we are taking steps. Those steps are visible, they're tangible, and we'll continue to do those things with the support of this body, the county council as a whole, and the men and women that currently give their hard-earned days to Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center. You mentioned Dr. Thompson. I will just tell you as a county administrator, Dr. Thompson has spent the majority of his last several months at the facility. So not only is our commitment to the men and women there in spirit, but it is there in practice. It is there in action. It is an active living example of me as an administrator and my desire to move Alvin S. Glenn to a place where folks that are housed there and folks that work there know that people care. And I think that is evident by what we've been doing, and I believe we'll continue to take those steps. Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions?
Madam Chair. And I just want to say that since the early part of this year as well, we have given updates to the court and Chief Justice Toll regarding Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, specifically regarding the attorney-client visitation project, but also just regarding Alvin S. Glenn as a whole. And I just wanted to let you know that on the record in open court, Chief Justice Toll stated that she is happy and impressed with the dedication of county council, the county administrator, and myself, the county attorney, and the staff with the things that they've done and improvements that they've made, and not just in talk, but in action. And that she says it's the first time in 25 years of dealing with Richland County and Alvin S. Glenn that she's seen that the county council and county administrator and attorney and everyone seems to be truly dedicated and shown the action. And she, said this on the record in open court. And I've just provided updates to her twice so far this year, and we'll be doing it again in December regarding Alvin S. Glenn. And I just wanted that to be known to you and to the public, because there, like Mr. Brown stated, there are a lot of things that we hear or read, but those things for some reason don't get reported. So I'm reporting it here to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney.
Madam Chair.
Sir, Mr. Manuel.
Madam Chair, there's a couple minutes left. Could I get clarification from the administrator? Because I have not seen Administrator Thompson around here. So you said he spent a lot of time at the detention center recently. Was he there as an observer or an occupant?
He was there as an employee of Richland County working to support Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center staff on behalf of county administration.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. I knew you were too quiet for a reason. But I want to echo your sentiments, Mr. Brown. This body, as well as this staff, has truly taken on the onus of this project, and we are committed to making sure that Alvin S. Glenn does continue those exceptional standards and set those. So thank you to that awesome staff at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center for all your hard work, for staying the course. Thank you to our staff. Thank you to this body. And I am like Ms. McBride, I'm impressed. And I thank you very much. So are there any further questions, concerns?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I see our colleague is just about ready to start our Development and Services Committee meeting. So I will move to adjourn this meeting.
Second. Ms. Carrillo, can you call for the vote, please?
McBride,
Yes.
Teratio,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.